Welcome back to this series, the summer series, Conscious Creation in the Age of AI. In today's interview, I have a voiceover actor here. My guest today on the Unjaded podcast is Paul Schmidt. Paul is a voice actor. He's a community builder and a voiceover business coach, helping other voice actors grow their businesses in the online space. This is part of our Conscious Creation in the Age of AI summer series on Unjaded. And I think you're going to find this episode really interesting because Paul is talking about the concerns that you may or may not have thought of, specifically scams coming up around your voice. He shares a statistic that's just a little bit scarier than scary, that you only need 3 seconds of your voice in order for your voice identity to be taken and used elsewhere. He talks a lot about what we can do in this new age that we are walking into with AI. As entrepreneurs, how do we keep our integrity? How do we use AI as the tool that it is meant to be and not get into kind of mucky waters with it? He talks about AI slop and all of the messy content that's out there. This is a really great episode for you if you too have concerns. Actually, it's going to be great for you if you don't have concerns as well, because this may open your eyes to some of the things that you may want to be a little more careful of as an entrepreneur with a lot of voice content out there in the online space. Welcome to the show, Paul. I'm excited to have you join us.
I'm excited to be here, Vickie. Thank you so much for having me.
So you have a really different niche compared to most of my audience. Can you talk about how you got into voice acting?
Sure. I started, good Lord, in 1990. Well, I started in the radio business in 1989, but I didn't really get on air full time until 97. And when you're a disc jockey, they give you what they call production, right? Which is after your shift, they hand you a few scripts and they point you towards the production booth and they say, okay, here are the scripts. Go make these commercials, and you voice them and you put all the production together. And I loved this work. And I quickly came to understand that what we were doing, at the local radio station was not as good as what we were getting in from the advertising agencies and from national, right? The national commercials. And so I started kind of really going on the deep dive and found out that there's this thing called voice acting. Well, I had grown up as an actor on stage, right? I had done 25 musicals. I actually started college as a theater major, and then I fell into radio during college. And now here we're coming full circle. I can combine acting with, being behind the mic, and I loved it. And so I started, there's a little bit of a long-winded answer, but I started to really dig into it and really try to make a run at voice acting. But I was in Wilmington, Delaware in 1997, 1998. And what I learned was that if you weren't in, at that time, New York or LA, maybe Chicago, if then you didn't have access to coaches, you didn't have access to the national castings, you just were not on the radar. And I was 20 minutes south of Philly, but the problem was, even in a market like Philly, all the on-camera talent already had the relationships. So they got all the voiceover work, right? And so I did what radio people do, which is I kept side clients. Hey, you did our radio spot. Would you do our cable spot? And they'd throw me some side money, and that was great. And I did that for 20 years until I finally came to realize that the world changed and that you could not be in LA or New York, and you could get coaching because of digital video and Zoom and a bunch of different technologies. And I went full time in 2018. So long-winded answer. I apologize.
No, that's okay. So you've really been at the forefront of a lot of these changes in the online space. That's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, that was literally the thing where the light bulb went on. I realized that, probably the biggest change in our business was YouTube, because now you had every company had really become a media company. The guy up the street from me that I take my car to, Vickie, he does YouTube videos to bring people into his shop. He does content marketing around automotive fixes, right? And that, again, that's like, hello, everybody needs voiceover now. Whereas
Yes.
that wasn't the case 20 years ago, right? It was very, very heavily gate kept 20 years ago.
So everybody needs voiceover. Explain to me what you mean by that.
So voiceover is anytime you hear a disembodied voice in a piece of media. It could be a radio commercial, could be an off-camera voice on television, could be a cartoon, could be an audiobook, could be a piece of corporate training or medical training. It could be a corporate anthem or a product demo or a whiteboard video or a product launch video. Anytime that there's a voice with imagery, or even in the case of a radio commercial or audiobook, even without the imagery, we call it voiceover.
So even an Instagram reel for our entrepreneurs that are doing
Absolutely.
voiceover type things. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Most social creators will do their own voiceover, but yeah, that's an example. Sure.
So concerns about AI, because you're really at the place with your business or with this industry that you're in where you must see a lot of scary stuff.
Well, scary is kind of a relative term. Yes, is I guess the first question is AI making inroads into voiceover? Is it taking some work from human voice artists? And the answer is absolutely yes, it is. I am of the opinion and have observed that in most cases, it's taking some of the work that we don't even want. What I mean by that is it's making possible things like back recording encyclopedic content for the for the visually impaired, right? That's work that was never going to be cost effective to hire a human voice actor to do. So that's, I think, one of the great uses of AI in our business. But the problem is not the technology. The problem is people are misusing it, and some tech companies are taking advantage of the lack of legislation around AI to exploit human voice artists. And that's the scary part. The tool itself doesn't scare me all that much because, quite frankly, the tool is not up to par. It's the misuse of the tool by the large tech companies and even by the mom and pops, we'll call them scammers, that are taking work that was trained by a human voice actor, oftentimes unknowingly and without their consent, to be able to produce work that they normally wouldn't be able to produce in the first place.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a slippery slope that many industries are on right now, is AI. Yeah.
Yeah, I just watched an episode of John Oliver's show last week tonight, and he discussed this phenomenon of AI slop and this sort of cookie cutter content that is being manufactured with AI images, AI video, AI voiceover, is just clogging the internet, and it's really become a problem on sites like Pinterest, where people are looking for human generated content. And there's been a lot of slapback, even anecdotally in our business, because I know a lot of voice actors, myself included, we're getting work back that we had once, quote unquote, lost to an AI voice. Producers and content producers are finding out how difficult it is to get a true human sounding voice out of AI. So at least in our business, the technology is not there yet, but there's a more moral and ethical question of how are we going to protect artists? And by the way, how are we going to protect regular people from deep fakes with voiceover and imagery and all of that? The legislation's got to catch up quickly, and that's what concerns me in the short term.
And on that thread, one of my big concerns is children. People putting so many images in their children's voice. And you know what? I was guilty of it too. I have grandkids, and I used to love to show our Mimi days, and now I do not put anything of theirs online. I didn't even really think about it until AI started becoming more and more prominent. There is a lot of scary stuff that can happen with people's images and voices online without their permission.
Absolutely. And so in our business, our main lobbying organization is called NAVA, the National Association of Voice Actors. There's now a new Canadian corollary called the Canadian Association of Voice Actors. And these organizations and similar organizations around the world are lobbying to protect not only voice actors, but regular people from having their name, image, likeness, and voice explore.
Mhm.
Now, there has been some name, image, and likeness legislation passed. The first job is to get voice added to that, but more importantly, to be able to protect people. And what those organizations are trying to legislate, or what they call the three C's: the consent. In other words, that person, whether they're an artist or not, being able to have consent over whether or not their voice is used and how it's used, control over how it's used, and compensation. That is, if you do this professionally, or even if you don't, you should be fairly compensated for the use of your name, image, likeness, and voice. And so it's trying to give people control over what we've traditionally always had control over, right? Everybody here has probably signed a photographic waiver, right? When you're getting headshots taken. Take that same concept and apply it to now just about anything on the internet. You've got to have control over what is inherently yours.
Mm-hmm. Let's switch gears for a second here and talk about how you're actually using AI in your own business. How are you walking this line in your own business?
So for me, the corollary is I talked about work that voice actors were never going to do, right? I'm a small business like you. I'm locally a one-person team. And for me, it was never, and I also come from a writing degree.
Mm.
I've always written my own copy. And now I use AI for a writing assistant. I was never going to be able to hire a writer, a copywriter. First of all, I have the skill, but it is a huge time saver for me. I have trained my ChatGPT in my voice because I do so much writing. And so now it writes and sounds probably 80% like me when I get the first draft back. And then it's incumbent upon me to make sure that it really is authentic to me and my voice. But in terms of being able to run outlines, to be able to write ebooks, to be able to write scripts I have a YouTube channel that I publish content on, because I also have a business where I help voice actors find work. So I'm constantly producing content for myself for that business. And the time that it saves me in organization, in strategic planning, I use, in fact, we had a situation a couple of weeks ago where some of the voice actors in our community were having difficulty making Squarespace domains work with Google Workspace. Right? Just the two were not working and playing well together. And the weird part is Squarespace domains bought Google domains. So you would think and I said, well, let me find out what's going on here. And I used the deep research function of ChatGPT to do what probably would have taken a consultant 6 months to do. And that is research this issue, figure out all the nuance, right? And give me a full report back along with possible solutions. Took maybe 20 minutes to really research the entire internet. In the conflict between these two tools, strategies to be able to circumvent that issue. So it's a great research tool. I used to say that the internet was the greatest research tool ever invented, and now that has become generative AI. So it really does save me a lot of time in my business. And again, the tool is not the moral issue. The tool is new. How are you going to use the hammer in your own business? And how do you protect yourself when your name, image, and likeness and voice are being used outside of your consent, compensation, and control? Those are the two issues for me.
So how do we protect ourselves?
So the first answer is to be aware of the issue. The second answer is to make sure that you're making your voice known to your local, state, and federal legislators, right? Because if they don't understand the pain and the concern that people have, yes, there are lobbying organizations like NAVA, but legislation is always behind technology and always will be, right? Technology moves at such a swift pace. So the best thing that you can do is to advocate for yourself myself. I would be very wary of technology, and my bank still is pushing this technology where you can sign in with your voice. I avoid it like the plague. Ooh. Because voices, they need about 3 seconds. Technologically now, Vickie, they need about 3 seconds of your voice to be able to clone a model of your voice. Now, more data helps the clone and the model become more accurate, but to get a basic model of your voice, they need about 3 seconds of audio. I would say probably the vast majority of people, certainly in the US, have more than 3 seconds of audio on the internet, right? So you're incredibly vulnerable to these voice technologies. Much of a conspiracy theorist that I believe that the big tech companies, the Amazons and the Facebooks, at least yet, they're not using Siri ingested content or ingested content to clone voices. There's been no evidence of that I'm aware of, but without the legislation in place, that's certainly not outside the realm of possibility.
That is scary stuff. I'm digesting as you're speaking and thinking of all of the hours of audio content that I have online, and most entrepreneurs do.
And to be honest, the stuff that scares me the most is stuff that's already happening. There is legitimately fake news out there now. There are a huge part of AI slop is faked video that is showing all kinds of stuff that just flat out never happened. And people, especially, I'm 58 years old. I'd say my generation and up, right? They're less aware of the capabilities of AI. And so they're much more vulnerable to believing that this fake news and fake information is true, right? Before it was just writing, right? Well, anybody can fake writing. Now we have AI faking writing and now imagery, video, audio. When they call them deep fakes, there's a reason. They look absolutely authentic.
That's something I try to remind myself, my husband especially, is that is this real? We're all, and that's part of the reason that I think buyer trust is at such an all-time low, is because we don't know what's real and what's not. We have to be so on alert when we are looking at these things online, because I feel like most of what I'm looking at is fake, or more than what's real is fake. So there's also an opportunity in that for authentic entrepreneurship. There's an opportunity for those of us who are showing up and being ourselves to cut through the noise. How do we do that with our voices?
First of all, everything you do has to be in your voice. I mentioned before that, yes, generative AI is a great writing assistant for me, but I have to QC everything, right? I have to quality check everything, because even occasionally I'll get a fact that is incorrect, right? Which makes it not a fact, I guess. Pardon the grammar, but I'll get something back in a draft that I know to my core is not correct, and I have to QC it, right? I have to make it right. So just because you have, let's say in this case, a writing assistant that makes things much, much easier for you, it does not abdicate your responsibility to make sure that you're being correct, working within integrity, and working in your authentic voice. That is still on us as creators. It's on us as entrepreneurs. It's on us as artists.
And what would you say to the people who are not putting out voice, audio content, video content, any of that? They're afraid to get out in front of it, because I think that a lot of our listeners are thinking, oh, I can just create carousels. I can just get ChatGPT to write a post for me. I don't have to show up.
Well, I mean, that is always an option. It's one, because every new technology that comes along, and this is especially important, I think, for people that are of a certain age, as you and I are, Vickie. I think it's important to keep developing your technological skills as you age, because the technology is moving at such light speed that we're quickly going to get left behind. And if we tell ourselves these stories in our heads, like, oh, I'm a technology dinosaur, right? Then they become more true. But if you tell yourself, I'm simply going to learn this stuff at my pace, but I'm going to commit to learning it, then you, I think, alleviate any arbitrary deadlines, and you feel less likely to be falling behind. But you need to educate yourself because we now live in a technology-driven world.
Mm-hmm.
And the extent to which you develop your technological skills and acumen is the extent to which you're going to protect yourself and your family. I mean, older folks have been getting scammed for years, and that's only going to exponentially skyrocket with the use of AI and generative AI technology. So it is scary.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me just check my list a second here because I had written down some of the things that you said that you are using AI for that might help our listeners. The thing that sparked my interest the most was that you were using it for SEO in your content creation process for low competition SEO.
Yes.
How are you doing that?
This is a prompt I learned on YouTube from a guy who has a great technology channel named Wes McDowell. And he taught me this prompt that goes roughly like this. There's a cleaner version, but it goes roughly like this. I want you to suggest to me blog topics that have relatively high search value, relatively low competition, and that's another search term, means there's not a lot of creators creating content in that arena, right, for that topic, and that has a clear overlap with my paid offers, right? So I'm able to choose blog material that satisfies those three goals. So hopefully I'm getting volume. People are looking for that kind of content. Hopefully there's not a lot of competition around it, and it has a clear, now I want to provide value always to my audience, but I do want there to be an overlap topically with what I produce as products for my business. So that's a great prompt that I learned from Wes McDowell, and it really has helped my my blog output. And I do content on a weekly basis. I do a blog, and from that I produce a YouTube video, and I repurpose that audio as an audio podcast. So there's a one topic every week, and I'm pretty religious, pretty consistent about it. Out of a given year, I probably publish 47 to 48 times in a given year. So it really has helped me not only plan the content, but draft the content. I use it to help me now. And lately, I'd say for the last couple of months, every time I produce a week of content, I asked Chat GPT, and again, I've been training it for 2 years now, make suggestions to me that would give me a high value offering to my audience that I could also use to get leads, right? Every week I'm producing a high value lead magnet around the topic, whatever the topic is for the week. So now my lead generation has gone up for my digital business. So there are so many ways you can use it to brainstorm, to plan. I'm using it now to my signature course. I'm using it to help me plan a complete overhaul of that course, step by step. And I've also, you wouldn't think this from a voice actor, I've taken a couple of courses to become, in different arenas, a certified AI prompt engineer. So I know how to construct prompts to get the best results.
Nice. Okay. And are you creating custom GPTs in any of your programs?
I am. And in fact, I've productized a couple of them.
Nice.
We have one that's taken all of the, essentially a large part of what we teach other voice actors is direct email marketing, right? Going directly to prospects and not relying on their agents or Fiverr or Upwork or Voice123 or voices.com. And so a lot of that outreach is done through email, and all of the principles that we teach, the strategic process of writing those emails and how they should be done, we actually trained a custom GPT on, and we now have all of that strategy hard baked into that GPT, so that the voice actor can now purchase that GPT and say, hey, look, I want to target mid-sized ad agency creative directors for commercial work. And the GPT will say, okay, tell me a little bit about your voice acting, your website URL, other kinds of voice acting that you do. It ingests some of that data and then kicks out a strategically correct email so that the voice actor can then go, okay, first draft done. I'm already 90% there. And it'll kick out the follow-up and 3 more follow-ups after that based on that client avatar. I've also productized what I call the big book of voiceover client avatars, where we've got 87 different profiles of voiceover buyers that I used ChatGPT to help me outline and identify and construct the sort of the schema of each avatar. In other words, what kind of information are we giving for each profile buyer? And it's incredibly detailed. And I could have done it on my own. It probably would have taken me the better part of a year and a half.
Yeah.
Right. I think I had it done in about 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So to be able to, it's an extension, if you use it right, it's an extension of your brain, and it is a huge time accelerator.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard you use the phrase 2 or 3 times, first draft. And I think lots of times if we, in the copywriting space, we call it a shitty first draft. If we really recognize ChatGPT or AI copy as that.
Yes.
And then we put more into it.
Here's a fun exercise. If you think ChatGPT copy is perfect, generate a couple of pages on whatever topic for you, and then look for the patterns. Look for how many times it uses an M dash. I am still trying to get
me too.
My first draft.
Yes.
And I've told it countless times. For how many times it uses the construct. Well, it's not just this, but it's also that. Right. So it has a lot of repetitive phrases. And there are prompts that you can use to minimize that as well. But that's yet another reason you've got to sit down and edit that shitty first draft, because it is oftentimes kind of shitty.
Yeah. And so many times in my space, because I teach messaging according to your human design, I see people, they come into my programs and they're using that ChatGPT crappy first draft. And that's what they're putting out online. And like you said in the beginning, it's just creating more noise in the online space. We are filling up the ethers with all of this stuff. It's no wonder people are overwhelmed.
Yes.
They're numb on social media, nothing's catching their eye.
Well, and I think, that's the other half of this. Part of training a generative AI tool is to train it, for example, if you're writing, to train it in your voice, your writing style, right? Mm-hmm. The second part of that is to train it strategically in what you know. So, for example, a lot of the stuff that you and I have learned, I've trained into my GPT to help that tool do what I was going to do consistently anyway. Mm-hmm. But again, you've got to have the strategic acumen to be able to train the tool to kick that strategy back to you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what if you give people 3 specific things that you would train your AI with, or that they could train their AI with to make it better right out of the gate?
So first of all, if you're, and I just went back and did this myself, if you're producing content on a semi-regular basis, if you have a backlog of content, train the AI on that content, because it's already handwritten by you in your writing style. Right. So it can begin to learn your language patterns and how you think. Maybe scary for some people, but if you're going to leverage this tool, it's got to know it. All it is an algorithm that recognizes patterns. So you've got to feed it patterns that are unique to you in order to get those patterns back from the tool. Right. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, whenever you're brainstorming, whenever you're strategic planning, use it like a sounding board. Say, hey, ChatGPT, let's just say you're a seasoned marketing strategist, right? I want you to help me with project X, Y, and Z. First of all, here's the goals of the project. Now, kick out a first draft of an outline for me, and you'll be amazed at what you get back, right? And it's for organizing your thoughts, for organizing incredibly large, complex projects. I think it's an invaluable tool. So first is your voice. Second is strategic planning and brainstorming. And what would be third? I would say third is I am experimenting, and I've seen a lot of improvement. I'm experimenting with using AI to complement the subscriptions I have for stock photo imagery, right? I use a lot of stock images in the content that I produce. And so whenever I can't find something that's already on my stock services, I'm playing around now with asking ChatGPT, and there are other image specific generative AI tools that I have not used to be able to generate that content for me. And occasionally I get a clunker. I'll get a voice actor with 3 thumbs or five fingers and no thumb, whatever it might be. But the imagery has really improved, I'd say, especially in the last year. So start to play around with those tools as well. But again, you need to use them ethically and within your within integrity.
Mm-hmm. And always be checking quality assurance. You have to check every single thing that it comes back with, because some of it is just BS.
Yeah. I have a social media post where I have an image of a voice actor and the hand is incredibly malformed. And I didn't realize it until it was already out there. So I've got to pull that social media post. That photo was something that I've done it out of convenience. It's not something I was ever going to. It's not something because that's just not the way I work. I may have used a stock photo for it, but that stock photo didn't exist. So I've moral code that fits for me. I feel like I'm working in integrity according to my moral code. Other people may have a different code and they may see it differently, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. But I did not QC it, and that was on me. So,
so one last question. Are there other AI tools that you are using? You mentioned ChatGPT a lot, but what are the other ones that you are using?
I play around sometimes with Claude. Claude to me is a better writer, but I have enough training invested in ChatGPT now that I think I've made up for the ground. I would look at Claude if you're doing a lot of writing. And those, honestly, I have a narrow sort of content focus, and I haven't really played with a lot of the video tools. I haven't played with a lot of the imagery tools, as I mentioned before. So my particular use of AI is largely in writing and strategic planning and all the text-based generative AI stuff. But I think the scary and the great part of generative AI is that I believe we'll get to a place where these tools are enabling artists. Right. Yes, there's going to be a bumpy road between now and then, but I think, there's a technology in the movie industry called motion capture. Right. And you may have seen where the actor puts on like a green suit and it's got ping pong balls in it. And the system is made to capture their movements, their body language. Right. So I really believe that generative AI will sort of take that track where it will be a technology that will help artists do what they do. And so far, it doesn't help me do voiceover work, but we're at a place now where generative AI, for example, if I record a piece into my audio software, it may help me fix errors without having to go back into the booth to re-record. Mm-hmm. I could see that being one way it could enable what we do. So, ultimately, I think it's going to be a tool that will enable artists and regular people, craftspeople, to be able to do what they do better. But we've got a long road to get there, and we've got to be incredibly vigilant in the meantime, and even after we get there, not only to protect our own name, image, voice, and likeness, but to make sure that we're being proactive with our legislators and the lobbying organizations like NAVA and CAVA to back this sort of legislation, because the misinformation and disinformation and scamming that is made possible with these tools is absolutely scary.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for bringing that perspective. I'm glad to have some things that we can do just as regular people using AI. And I would not have thought to approach the legislature with my concerns. So I think that's important. If every single listener did that, we would make some headway here.
Yeah, I think just to give you a little context, the EU is, I won't say light years ahead, but significantly ahead with regards to AI legislation, as opposed to the United States and even Canada. And our legislative process tends to be a little more bogged down. And I think culturally, we give a lot more leeway, a lot more lenience to technology companies. Mm-hmm. And I believe that's in some ways dangerous. I think maybe the reins have to be tightened. Mm-hmm. Because as powerful as these tools are, what's the saying from Spider-Man? With great power comes great responsibility.
For sure.
And that's true. and generative AI is the poster child for that. And I think we've got to be very vigilant and very active with our lawmakers to be able to protect ourselves.
100%. Thank you for being here, Paul. I really appreciate you taking the time. Yeah. And where can people find you?
Some iteration of VO Pro. You can, if you want to find my voice acting business, I'm at paulschmidtvoice.com. And that's SCHMIDT. My digital is vopro.pro, where we, again, how to market their business. And on social media, I'm generally some iteration of that, either VO Pro or VO-Pro. It was hard to get consistent branding with that. And you can always reach out at paul@vopro.pro.
Awesome. I will link all of that up in the show notes so that people can find you. And I just have to say, I have voice envy. Whenever I hear, when you said that you were in radio, I'm like, oh yeah, that's it. It's a radio voice. I absolutely love it. I was at PodFest in January and the men would stand up and they would have these radio voices and I'd be like, oh my gosh, so good. So thank you for sharing your voice with us today.
Well, thank you. You're quite kind to say that. Although I will say there are many types of work where it actually works against me.
Really?
And so, yeah, I've had to spend a lot of time with my dear friend and coach, Tina Morosco, to train that out in certain genres, especially in commercial work, because this voice was really in vogue for television and radio 40 years ago. Now they just want an every person voice, right? So I've had to learn to sort of work around it, but I appreciate the compliment.
Crazy. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Vickie. It was lovely.